We're gonna listen to these people. They have such rich history in the culture of BBC ice cream. So I'm gonna kick it off to Minya, the infamous Miss Info. Not working? I got you. And she will be doing intros for all of the speakers. We have someone zooming in, which is why you see the big screen as well. So again, please, we do ask for your respect and your silence. The gems that these people will drop today are very impactful and important. This weekend is our 20th anniversary. So if anyone's trying to make big moves, create new brands, y'all got the blueprint right here. All right? Okay, thank you.
All right. Hey everybody, thank you so much for showing up. I mean, I know we're all steaming right now, but that just means that we'll marinate in the juices of all of this influence right here. 20 years, I mean, I'm really actually struggling to wrap my head around that. We have a lot of family in the building. You know, obviously legends in the building, so there's a lot of people to talk to, but right here, Hillary just mentioned that I'm going to be introducing these guys, but these are just family. Like, I don't even know how to put into words what they've meant to me over the years and what they've meant to this entire scene, but I'm sure that you guys know. So I actually want, I'm going to name all of them, but I'd like you guys to also kind of put into perspective that what 20 years means. Like, what was 20 years ago? Where were you? What were you doing? All right, so that's going to be a struggle for Mimi, but Philip leads over on the end.
Okay. Before we even get started, I don't know that everybody knows, so I just want to say something. This guy right here, Rob Walker, is the reason we're all here, because without Rob Walker, there might not be Neptunes, there might not be BBC, like none of it. And Rob believed, before anybody else did, in Pharrell. And Pharrell was pursuing his dream. Rob picked up the fucking phone and helped Pharrell get where Pharrell was trying to go. And so Rob's the foundation. It all starts with this guy. And he doesn't like what I'm saying. He doesn't like me telling you this. He's a real behind-the-scenes cat. No, but he's a real behind-the-scenes cat. And like, really, Rob is like the hub that made all of this happen.
Also, what I didn't fully realize, is that Rob Walker was part of just 3 people who actually started BBC.
That's right.
Facts? Rob Walker, Pharrell Williams, and Nigo.
That's right.
Super facts.
Yep.
That's right.
But Philip.
But hold on, it goes back farther because Minya, me, Rob, we're all from like basically the same freshman class, and we were all trying to figure it out.
Yep. In
the early '90s, the mid '90s, and I was at Rush Artist Management, Rush Producer Management. Rob was at RCA and then came and worked at Rush. Minya, I don't even know what you were doing, but you were around. You were riding motorcycles in Harlem.
Riding dirt bikes. I was, I believe at that time, well, by 2003, I think I was at MTV News.
Right.
So I was at MTV News after starting at The Source, Vibe magazine, Double XL magazine, and so I remember hearing about it because it was making news, all right? But I wanted to go from, Rob, at the time you were also still managing Pharrell?
Yeah, 20 years ago for sure.
Yeah.
Still managing, still in the mix of it all, and just really trying to figure it out. Really not understanding what we were doing and the impact that was happening and what was shifting in culture, but really just working and having fun. It was almost like we were living in a bubble.
Fully bubble.
Like a full bubble, because we had no idea what was happening on the outside.
Downtown was literally in a dome,
but
right?
Yeah, and it was also like, the Neptunes were happening, and like they were like everywhere, and then, like all of a sudden Pharrell was like in all these music videos, and it was just like a new wave started. And people would be like, who's the guy singing the hook with the yellow hat? Listen, this is a true story. I left hip hop and I was in heavy metal. I was on the road with heavy metal bands, and I ran into Pharrell. Like the last time I saw Pharrell, we were on the couch at Rush Producer Management. They were Rob's weird friend from Virginia that would come up on the train and sit in the office and play beats and stuff. And then, you know, I got sucked into a world of heavy metal. They fully blew up. I wasn't paying attention. I run into Pharrell in the parking lot of Fred Siegel in L.A. I didn't recognize dude. He came up to me and my boss. He was like Kumo D glasses, jewelry, trucker hat, like Puma suit. And I was like, when we had a real superficial conversation. He was like, I just saw so-and-so from Def Jam. He walked away, my boss was like, yo, who was that? And I was like, I don't know, one of these rappers from Def Jam or something, I don't know. And then I get back to New York, I hadn't seen Rob in mad long. I get back to New York, I run into Rob like the next week, and Rob's like, oh, you saw Pharrell in LA? I was like, nah. He's like, he said he saw you in Fred Siegel. I was like, oh shit, I did see Pharrell in LA. and like a couple weeks after that, Loic.
Oh yeah, we can't forget Loic.
Okay.
Loic on the screen.
The Frenchman in the building. Loic was on the road being Khalees's tour manager. They didn't have Star Trek yet. It was just Pharrell and Chad making beats. Loic was tour managing Khalees. And Loic called me and was like, yo, can you finish this Khalees tour? We got a Star Trek deal. I'm going to go work in the office. And I was tour managing these metal bands. So I just went from heavy metal to Khalees, which was a culture shock. And that's when Star Trek happened, and it all happened from there. And we went to Japan. Tell the story about when we went to Japan. And
I think you're speeding.
Yeah, can we at least can we just like let everybody
well,
also?
You're talking super facts, but I just think that we gotta like spoon feed it a little bit. Okay. I think you're giving them the whole spoon. Pause.
I mean, because also, I don't want to leave everybody else out.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I want to put everything into perspective. So that was, because actually, Philip, what you were talking about is kind of even before 20 years ago. That's maybe 25, right?
Yeah, he's talking. He's like talking about the foundation.
Very beginning.
Yes.
But 20 years ago, when the actual brand started, what up, Fresco? Where was Vashti? Where were you? Because I remember the legend of Vashti in these streets as like, who is this fly ass bitch? And
with the gold fronts and the Jordans.
I mean, all day. But what were you doing 20 years ago, 2003?
Hello, is this on? Oh. Hi. 20 years ago, I was in art school, so I came to New York City to study film. And I was just a downtown derelict. There wasn't many of us. You guys, we're a huge community now, so I feel happy to be in the room with all of you. But it was a very small scene. And so that's where I was. I was working retail for Stussy. And at the time, James Jebbia owned Stussy. James Jebbia, who, you know, Supreme. So I was a part of that little crew. And so that's where I was.
And how did you meet us?
I met you guys through a personal relationship, and it was 2003. It was exactly that year. I actually met Pusha before. It's a good story. Back in the day, there was not really internet or social media, and so a friend of mine who was from London asked me to help her stylist friend who was styling a music video for the Clips and some English singer. I don't know if you guys, it was like a girl named Kaya in the Clips. Do you know?
I don't know.
Okay. Anyway, so I assisted this stylist, and I met Pusha on set, and we became quick friends. And then shortly after that, I think NERD had a show, and he was like, "Oh, come check me out. We're opening for NERD," and so that's how I kind of met the gang.
And I want to say also that, you know, during that time, to put it into perspective, there was not really, there was no Twitter, right? There was no influence industry. So if you truly stood out and you had your own personal style, it was because you didn't see anybody else doing it. You weren't influenced by anybody. You were truly like building it yourself, and that was Vashti all day. Like, I have such clear memories of maybe being like, maybe it was like Cheetah or one of these iconic clubs that we would be in, and there would be a girl who was in the bathroom here, and we're all in the bathroom, sorority of girls, you know, putting our lip gloss on or whatever, and this bitch was standing there with like maybe like a pink Goyard, something that they never made since then, and just feeling like, but with Jordans. So I think that what a lot of us take for granted, you truly planted the seed. So,
thank you.
But Shady. Also, if there was something called social media or influence, it was Shady who was documenting all of the people who either were doing it or were about it, or you know, just had something really special going on. So, Shady, if you could kind of talk about where you came from and what you were doing in 2003.
Hey, everybody. I came from directing a shit ton of music videos in the 90s, House of Pain, Jump Around, Cypress Hill, Kill a Man, Punk's Jump to Beat Down. I knew Loic Villepentu for many years, from when he was starring in music videos playing pool. And I forgot which one it was.
Wait, what?
Nice and Smooth?
Yeah.
You were Nice and Smooth?
You all don't even know about Loic, because Loic's OGer than all of us.
All of us.
Like Loic was like rolling with Nice and Smooth, and like he was the white dude in the videos in like 92.
So you know he was badass.
Yeah, like, and he's from France. He moved here when he was 15, and he got accepted into the culture, because that's how real he keeps it.
That's right. So I ended up being a second unit director on a Clips video.
Which one?
Grindin'.
Okay.
And I ran in.
Give it up for that one, classic.
And I ran into
Classic,
Loic,
classic.
and I'm like, "What are you doing here?" And he's like, "This is guy Pharrell with a trucker hat and a Prada jacket." And I was like, "Hey, nice to meet you." And I was like, "You look different than all the other guys in the projects in the middle of Virginia." And next thing I know, I keep running into Pharrell in different events and on a Justin Timberlake video, and then I happen to be in Tokyo, and he's like, "You want to shoot Pharrell and Nigo?" And next thing I know, I'm in Tokyo, and I'm shooting Pharrell and Nigo in Tokyo for BBC Ice Cream. And I think that's roughly the beginning. I don't know, it's kind of blurry. That's a lot of brain cells ago. But
Yeah.
that's the gist of the early days.
But you, Shady, you had been around so many, incredible creative talents, geniuses. What stood out immediately in those early days as being different about this crew versus so many others? Because I obviously being on the hip hop journalism side for so many years, you made lots of friends and met all different types of characters. But honestly, this is the closest. This is considered my family, and there's a reason for that, because it was very unique, very special, and very different from, I think, a lot of creative crews. So what was your take?
Well, first off, I was a huge fan of Nigo, and always idolized what he was doing, and how, the brand of Bathing Ape was this brand that you couldn't get a hold of. Before social media, before you can buy anything online, it was like this brand that was untouchable. You had to go to Japan to buy it, and then meeting Pharrell, that was like, oh, I've met a link to Nigo, and all of a sudden I'm in the same room. Yeah, it was the plug. And I was starstruck with Nigo, but Pharrell was a dope person, but it was also like, whoa, Nigo is like,
wow,
he's like this crazy guy that is he's like this enigma that you're like, who is this guy? And he's actually real. You could touch him. But once I started being able to photograph Pharrell on the regular, probably Pharrell's the most photographed person I've ever dealt with. So yeah. I mean, I'm happy to be in that community. But Pharrell was part of a whole family of people that, when I was coming, into my own, and 20 years ago, maybe a little bit sooner than that, but that era, it was dope, because they were just not giving a fuck. The big trunk jewelry, the loud colors, the patterns, and it was one of those things that I was like, all right, I'm in good company.
Yeah, for sure.
So
Also,
yeah, I mean, I was rolling with people like Sue Kwan, photographer extraordinaire.
Give it up for Sue.
That's in the house. She was an inspiration, and you know, we've collaborated on a lot of projects, and she's photographed Nigo a bunch, and she's been in the realm also of artists turned clothing designers, and I've got to rub elbows with a bunch of them, and you know, thanks to Sue also and Loic.
I think like one, you know, overriding principle for this entire sort of creative collective has always been like a lot of different influences from different places, not just one. So it wasn't just like, hey, I'm from the Bronx, I rep this block, and that's pretty much all I know. Pharrell, BBC, and everybody here has always kind of been, as you were saying, punk rock or heavy metal, or from France, representing downtown, representing fashion, and film. So I think that that's one thing that has always held true. But what grade were you in, Mimi, in 2003?
I can just speak loud. 9th grade. Yeah.
I don't even. Yeah. But even though you were a baby at the time, when did BBC actually come into your perception? Like, when were you like, oh, I know these people, or I want to be around this?
Really late. So I didn't know, because I was just in a suburb, and it was just go to school, get into college, and that's usually the circle that you go through. I didn't know till I was in college, senior year, so like 2010, 2011, just because, you know, everyone in Jersey just wore the Ugg boots, leggings, like a Columbia fleece zip. That was like the uniform. I just wore like Vans and like whatever jeans you get at like TJ Maxx. It wasn't very like a fashion forward. It was just what everyone kind of wore. Yeah, fitting in. So I just found out about it because I was researching. I did children's wear, and it was obviously streetwear, but back then it was only either high fashion or fast fashion, like a big Gap or something like that. There was no in between. So Babe and BBC were the only expensive but, you know, good quality streetwear, and so that's how I got into here.
Well, that actually brings up a lot of what was very different about BBC from the very beginning. So if you guys, like, especially Rob and Phil, if you can talk about when you guys were starting.
The Loic intro?
Oh, yeah, I mean, Loic.
Oh, I want to say one thing.
Is Loic locked up?
Loic is kind of the hub, though.
He looks like he's in jail. Loic, why don't you speak on this? If you can introduce yourself and just speak on your entry point, or how you got into this group.
Wait, you're on mute, Lloyd?
He's we can't hear you.
Use sign language.
Nope. Talk on your phone.
Whatever for Loic.
Can you hear me now?
Go now. Try now.
Hello?
Yep.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I've known Shady since the 80s from, like, skating and Washington Square Park, you know, kids before kids. So I grew up in New York City in the 80s. Philip said at 15, I was actually 13 when I came here, so I just, you know, came from Paris, and through skating and hanging out in the park, just met a lot of different people, and just got connected to the music business early on, and was lucky to make some interesting friendship and relationship in the music business, which led me to eventually start working in the music business. And I don't know if I don't know if I met Philip or Rob first, but we all met pretty much around the same time. But I knew Minya. Well, actually, I knew Minya second in this group of people through mutual friends.
Yep.
So before Miss Info days, you know, when you just plain old Minya.
At the time, Loic was only moving with gangsters. Literally, only moving with gangsters. Yeah. And then we would all see each other. Yep.
When was that, Minya? Like early 90s?
Yeah, that was mid-90s. Mid-90s.
Mid-90s.
Yeah.
So I probably met Rob and Philip right after that. Probably like same thing, mid-90s, I would say, through working at Def Jam, and we all worked for different people there, but we all just started building a friendship. I met Rob through some super not random, but they were good friends of mine from California. We randomly met at the Flat Hotel in New York, just playing music and listening, to music, and all trying to figure out how to, sort of elevate ourselves within the music business.
But do you guys remember, like, when the idea of starting a clothing line really, how did that happen? Was it a conversation? Was it something that Nigo said, hey, you guys should do this? Or, there's always been a special relationship between Nigo and Pharrell. But how did that suddenly turn into something that you guys wanted to launch a business on?
Rob, you want to go with this one?
Yeah, Rob.
I think it all started with the Bape relationship with Pharrell and introducing Bape in America. I mean, Jacob introduced Pharrell to Nigo, and Nigo.
Jacob the jeweler.
Yeah, Jacob the jeweler. And basically, Nigo was a huge fan of Pharrell, and every piece of jewelry Pharrell would have that Jacob was making for Pharrell, Nigo would do it in like yellow gold, rose, right? He would do it in like every flavor. And then eventually, Jacob was like, you guys need to meet. Like, there's this guy from Japan, like he's got this thing, but he really loves you. So when we were going to Japan, we spoke to Jacob about it, and Jacob put it together. And then when we got to Japan to meet Nigo.
Hold on.
Okay.
Is Bill there?
Yeah, Bill is here. Bill.
Commander.
So Bill, everything you said was true and factual until we got to how we met, which was because of Bill. So Pharrell needed to finish the Clones album and needed a studio in Tokyo. And we hadn't met Nigo then. And Bill knew Nigo through Matt Takei and knew they had a studio there. So Bill linked me with Matt Takei, and that's how we actually all met Nigo, because we showed up to Japan to use Nigo's studio to finish Clones. And Bill had made that connection after, obviously, we'd heard of Nigo through Jacob and that whole story you just told. But Bill made the connection to get us to in the building.
What was that?
I missed that detail.
What was that experience like going to Japan for the first time? Especially in what, like 2001 or something like that, right?
I think that was probably our second trip to Japan, right? So we had.
No, I think it was my first.
That was first?
No, actually, it's my second, because Loic and I went with Khalees to.
We went with Khalees, yeah.
No.
I went with Khalees once or twice, and then we met with Nigo that first trip.
And I mean, people always talk about meeting Nigo and specifically going to his house.
It was crazy.
And how that was like a mind-blowing experience.
No, but
so
wait,
tell me about your
wasn't the studio connected to the actual like office? Like it was all one building?
Yeah, it was upstairs in the office where he had full on like photo studio, showrooms, recording studio.
Right, so we went from like the studio, or forget the studio part because I don't remember that too much, but I remember us going to meet Nigo and then seeing everything in real time at the clothes. We just freaked out because
what was it? What did you see?
It was everything fresh. It was any and everything. It was any and everything fresh, like, and put together in the illest way, like. Sneakers on the conveyor belt. Everything was just next level. Like we had never seen it before.
Yeah.
So we all became like super Nigo fans. Like super. Like we was like obsessed. Like yo.
Yeah.
Because we never seen anything like that.
It was the coolest shit ever.
No one had ever done it as big as he was doing it.
No.
At that time.
No.
That was legendary.
Super legend.
And then so. Fast forward to actually deciding, like, okay, well, let's launch a brand, and how are we going to differentiate this brand, Billionaire Boys Club, from Bape?
I feel like Pharrell was on some real pajamas. Like, I want to wear pajamas and like have these like kids footsie, like kind of all over patterns, and like Bape was like one thing, and it was like Bape was doing what they were doing, and there was. It's probably around the same time that Cause was doing stuff with Bape, right?
Yeah, but I think we were supposed to be like the cousin, right? We was looking at this like, all right, Bape is over here and this is happening, and we were going to be a more accessible, because you couldn't get your hands on Bape really, right? You had to stand on long lines, right? So we were like, we're going to be the more accessible.
Still had to go to Japan, so we were going to be Bape here. Like it was like, oh, this is that, but
no, but Bape had the store here. Bape had.
Where did people buy Bape in 2003?
So
Yes.
because they were in it and they were in Japan, but by this time I was just in New York.
Yep.
First of all, only people who were sneakerheads knew about Bape at that time. Only. And if you knew about it, but it doesn't mean you necessarily saw a pair in real life. Like you had to go to Japan to get them. You know, for me as a young kid, I was going up to like 57th, going to this Japanese. It was a Japanese magazine store to buy Boon magazine, to buy all these Japanese magazines to see what the kids in Tokyo were wearing. And so I feel like that is a major point that we should point out. That like it wasn't like a big thing here yet.
Yeah,
No.
how do you?
No, I'm saying I think by the time that we started our brand, it was a big thing here. Not, we didn't know about it prior to that, but I'm talking about the inception of BBC and ice cream. Bape was happening in New York already. It was moving. It was happening because they had a store when we built our store on West Broadway. They had their store on Mercer.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying you couldn't get into Bape you had to like know somebody. It was like a thing. So we were supposed to be the more accessible version of that, right? Like you could have a piece of us, like, and as it started going and the demand started happening, Nigo was, Pharrell was like, let's do it like Bape, and I'm like, what? Like,
yeah.
We supposed to, this supposed to be something. It was like, no, let's do everything like Bape. So.
I think that's also really interesting because I remember at the time it being very different from everything else kind of on the scene, right? Like, just to put it in context, there were a lot of celebrity-led, artist-led clothing lines. There was, Sean John was already big, huge, right? There was a coup. Does anybody know what a coup is? Yeah, right. Apple Bottom, Shady Limited,
Rock Nation or Rockaware.
Yeah, Rockaware, Baby Fat, Aniche, and all of those other. But there was a huge difference because, true or false, Nigo was like, we're gonna make BBC in Japan. It's gonna be the same quality level, and so obviously it means that it was also harder to make. Much more expensive price point. The prices that we're all used to now is the norm, but back then we were never seeing like a $50, $60 t-shirt. I don't really know if you guys can kind of speak on.
Our t-shirts were 80.
80, 90.
Yeah. We had a $500 Swarovski t-shirt. Who got that? Just to speak on that for a minute, like Rob, Pharrell, Lloyd, Phillip, we never worked in fashion. We came from the music industry. We didn't know what we were doing. Pharrell had this idea, and Nigo was willing to partner with Rob and Pharrell and make it happen. And basically, the first T-shirts were on Bape blanks.
Right.
And our whole production was Bape, and eventually, like, people from Bape got broken off to us and became our Japanese production people.
Facts.
But we weren't just making like Gildan $4 T-shirts and selling them for $80. We were spinning our own cotton and like making like cotton from the West Bank of the Mississippi in Tennessee. It was like so specifically crazy. And it really cost that much to make. Like, we were making regular retail to cost of goods to wholesale to retail. We were following those same margins, but it was just crazy because we were making, 20 T-shirts in Japan of the highest quality goods. Like, you know.
Was there ever any pushback from, you know, forces within your business circle saying else. Like we can do this better and easier and faster?
That's what we're doing. We were full all in. Like, this is what we're doing.
Well, the Reebok, right? Reebok was our partner in sneaker, and they also had the clothing part of it as well. And as we started to go into the deal a bit more, and the sneakers was out, and then it got to the clothing part. Nigo was like, "Nah, we can't do that," you know, because the way Reebok was looking at it was more so like another celebrity brand that, you know, they just was gonna flood the market with, you know, their materials and anything. And Nigo was like, "We can't do that." So Reebok was gracious enough to give us back the clothing piece for us to do it on our own, and that's when me, Nigo, and Pharrell, that's when it really started on the clothing side, right? When Reebok gave us back that clothing piece to do our own thing.
I think that also, you know, when the store opened, the original store, so we're talking about West Broadway. How many of you guys ever went to the West Broadway store? Okay. So y'all remember that. It's amazing.
How many of y'all work there?
Okay. Got alumni here. That's nice. I remember that opening very well, but I want to kind of get an idea from you guys about just the scene, the downtown Soho scene as well. Like Vashti and Shady, you guys must have been everywhere, you know, in this area. So tell us, like, what was Soho like in 2003? How was it different? How was it different? Where were you going?
Okay, so I have to reiterate that it was a very small scene.
Yeah.
Again, the sneaker world, sneaker culture had not taken over as we know it today. It was like a very small scene. You knew who was who. So that's number one thing. Another thing was that good style was hard to come by. Again, there was no internet, there was no social media. So people who had good style really stood out, and people had personality. And I think, you know, that also speaks to BBC, because I feel like you guys were just like such a hodgepodge of misfits who had your own unique style, who kind of, you know, made it its thing. But so again, it was a small scene. Streetwear was really, really small. I mean, as opposed to now it's like part of the mainstream. And I feel like it was also a scene that was sort of hard to get into. I mean, the fact that Loic came here at age 13 from Paris and inserted himself naturally into like a very hood, hardcore scene says a lot, because at that time you needed to really be authentic and be real. It was just seen that you had to prove yourself.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, oh, I have this many followers and I'll follow you, you follow me, now we're friends. It was not like that at all. So it was kind of like hard. You had to know people, you had to be introduced, and you kind of had to work your way in.
What do you remember? What was on that block besides BBC?
West Broadway?
Yep. What was around there? Because I have distinct memories. I know there was obviously Stussy and Union were down the block. Big Drop for the ladies. I don't know if anybody remembers Big Drop. Soho Nails was on the block. That was big. G-Shock was next door.
But G-Shock was way later.
Anthropology. All right.
Our store used to be Rizzoli Bookstore.
Wait, what, Loic?
Our store used to be Rizzoli Bookstore before they moved uptown. It was Rizzoli in the 90s.
Wow. And what were the hangouts? Like, where were you hanging out during that time in Soho? Shady, where were you going?
Max Fish.
203.
R.I.P.
Yeah, 2003. Well, Soho, a lot of people don't know, Soho used to be this exclusive neighborhood where you couldn't open a retail business. It was all, if you had a chain store, you couldn't open up in Soho. Right. Soho was all galleries, and it was very exclusive, lofts, and nobody came down here unless they were lost. But then at one point, Soho, it broke open around when Union opened up, and Stussy opened up, and they started to open up to normal businesses. But for many years, Soho was a bit of a ghost town. If you had a chain store, you couldn't open up a Banana Republic or a Gap anywhere near Soho. And then I think Chevignon changed that. But when BBC opened up on West Broadway, it was a bit of a shock to the neighbors. I remember when there was a line down the block and a kid standing in the window with a keyboard, and he wanted Pharrell to sign the keyboard, and it was like a queue down the block. And actually, you didn't see, like, I used to go to Japan a lot, and that was the only place I saw lines, a queue, a line down the block. And then when BBC opened, all of a sudden there was a queue down the block, and the neighbors, there's still the West Broadway people that own their, multi-million-dollar lofts, and they were kind of like, what the fuck's going on?
Yeah.
There's all these black and Hispanic kids
the
waiting
neighbors
in
weren't
line
happy.
with a lot of loud colors.
Yep.
And then it kind of changed the vibe of West Broadway between, Prince and Houston.
Yeah.
Between Scrapyard and BBC, the neighbors weren't happy. I think we're responsible for Fashion Night Out being finished.
Yeah, being canceled.
But we really changed West Broadway with our Fashion Night Out stuff.
What happened on Fashion Night Out? There was an event that Vogue tried to put on. Anna Wintour had a grand idea. All of the stores would participate and open their doors, and it would be kind of like a party in each store, and you would go from store to store. Except for there was BBC on West Broadway and Bathing Ape on Green. And Cuddy was at Bathing Ape, and who was over at BBC? Was Pharrell there?
Everyone. Pharrell.
Yep. Chris Brown.
Like Dapper Dan was there, like all kind of people. And Cuddy came from Bape to BBC, and the entire world came with him.
Yeah.
Was this the same year we had the flatbed truck? That's the second one. Okay. Cuddy showed up with all of New York, and like we had kids banging on the glass, like had to shut down, had to pull the riot gate down. It was wild. And then I think the next year, NERD pulled up on a flatbed out front, and it was another full-on riot.
Mayhem.
And after that, Vogue was like, nah, we good. We good on that.
That was literally like the hood meets Met Gala in the street. It was
West
an
Broadway was not
amazing
ready.
time to be alive. If you guys can also speak about like just big landmarks in the brand and things that were either turning points. What was something that happened that kind of was like a big deal for the brand, where you kind of felt like, oh, we made it, or oh, people are really embracing this brand?
We had a really good relationship with Entourage, and they wore the clothes on the show a lot. Turtle's character, and I think that really elevated things. We got so much celebrity love just because of Pharrell. Like, Andre Leon Talley really embraced the brand and wore it in multiple appearances. We gave him this really awesome cardigan, and he wore it like to Fashion Week. And
I think Drop It Like It's Hot really sort of opened the whole thing up.
Yeah, speak on that, Rob.
I mean, it just created an insane demand.
It was the video.
With the video and the shoe and
these are the fronting video too.
The fronting video, yeah. I think that was more about Pharrell though. You know what I'm saying? Coming. That was his coming up.
Saw the polos and they were like, "What is that?"
They did. But the Drop It Like It's Hot video was when it felt like we couldn't walk down the street with the clothes on, without people being like, "Where can we get that? I'll pay for it right now."
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody was hitting you guys up trying to get stuff. I know I was heavy on Astor Chambers trying to get a pair of ice creams. He sent me 2 at the Vibe magazine office, and it was like I owned the place.
Yes, Astor Chambers was our sneaker guy at Reebok. He worked on our behalf at Reebok.
Yep. And Vashti, like, little known fact, I don't know whether a lot of you guys know that Vashti was assigned, or you got, you were hired as the designer of ice cream ladies. Or was it, at a certain point, I remember getting a hoodie that was Billionaire Girls Club. So if you can kind of, and I treasure that, I'm sure that I have that in storage, but if you can kind of talk about what that was like, because that was very rare, you know, unfortunately. And it almost felt like women historically were this like black market buyer of streetwear. You know, officially the size smalls were for the Asian market, but that's what we were all buying. And it took a while, and it took people like Vashti to really sort of show and prove to a lot of these brands that whatever you're making, it's gonna look better on her. So if you can kind of talk about how that came about, you
Sure.
designing.
I just want to say, before I forget, Astor Chambers is also the reason why I got the Jordan deal. So shout out to Astor, because without you guys, I wouldn't have met Astor, and then, so, yes. So the opportunity, I was creative director of Ice Cream Girls, and that came through Pharrell, which was an incredible blessing for him to trust me with taking on like the female perspective of his beloved brand. So shout out to him for that. Yeah, I mean, I feel like for me at the time, I didn't come from a very, a background that was educated in that sense when it came to creative direction. So for me, it was just taking a lot of my inspiration, but also I didn't want to offset the core and the identity of ice cream because it existed before. So a lot of it was just trying to mirror what ice cream had been doing, but also have a feminine touch, take my inspiration, which was, you know, a lot of skate, it was 90s inspiration, it was like Alterna Girl movement, it was very varied. But the idea was, at that time, to show that we as women were multifaceted. Like one day we're a tomboy, the next day we want to be like a girly girl. So there was a real range, I think, which was different for a streetwear approach at that time. I think some people just kind of stuck with like t-shirts and hoodies, but with Ice Cream Girls, we had the opportunity to do more. And so we did a lot of amazing cut and sew pieces, and it was so much fun.
Shady, can you talk about shooting a lot of the lookbooks? And like there was always like celebrities in there, and also people that were sort of street celebrities, you know, like just people who were key figures in the scene. So
shout out to the twins, wherever they are. I know they're in the building.
D and Ricky.
D and Ricky, where are they? I know they're in the building. One of them.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, we shot Jadakiss. That was a fun. We used Rob's car. Rob, we used your car, and I was very nervous about scratching your car and pulling the umbrella out the door with Jadakiss, and we got to shoot at the last ice cream spot in Williamsburg that had all the ice cream trucks that you see in Brooklyn were stored all in Williamsburg, and we got to shoot in there before they became like the supreme showroom. No, all through my shoots with BBC, I got to shoot Vashti and Philip, and you know, Pharrell a bunch of times. One of the funniest things that ever happened was I got to shoot BBC lookbooks in giant studios that were bigger than this room, and I got to shoot BBC lookbooks in their office and in my apartment. And one of the funniest things was my girlfriend, Pharrell, came to my apartment, and I was shooting, this many years ago, and my girlfriend walked out, and she thought Ben the bodyguard was Pharrell, and it was really embarrassing because she walked up to Ben and was like, "Nice to meet you." I'm like, that's Pharrell. She's gonna kill me for telling this story. But Pharrell found it very amusing. But yeah, Pharrell was in a majority of the early shoots, and it was funny because he would always give me the same face for every shoot.
Yeah.
And I was always be like, "Yo, give me more." And he's like, "Dude, I'm doing 18 photos. You know, like I do this every day. It's so much energy." And I was like, I like to give a singular look. And I was like, "Oh yeah, I get it." And then after the shoot, he came up to me and goes, "All right, you want to do a roll? I'll do a roll, and I'll do whatever you want." And the best photo roll I ever took of Pharrell is after a shoot where I had wanted to get a lot of energy out of him, which for 18 shots he did like the same look for 18 different sets of clothing. But after the shoot, I guess he felt bad, and he gave me so much energy for this one little
You just
private
let
photo
loose,
shoot,
yeah.
and he's just like, you know, doing the V sign and amping it up, and he just gave me everything I wanted all day long in like 5 minutes after the photo shoot, and I was like, oh, I love this guy. So that was one of the best moments I ever had with Pharrell, and I've done about 50 photo shoots with him, so that's.
Yeah, he had to keep it blue steel, and then he kind of.
Yeah, he's like, I want to keep the same face for every
Yeah.
photo because it's so much energy to be a model. Like, you know, turn it on, happy, sad, serious. You know,
Yeah.
he's like, I'm gonna keep the same face and keep it consistent. And I understand that because it's a lot of work
to be him.
Yeah.
For sure.
Being photographed every day.
Yeah. For Loic, Philip, and Rob, you know, can you also just speak on how the brand became really global? You guys opened numerous stores in Asia. So what were some of the highlights of that experience? I mean, it was also super innovative, ahead of its time. Nobody else was really out there like that. Even now, they're not.
Definitely the highlight of opening the Hong Kong store was Rob Walker drinking red wine, and he doesn't drink red wine, so it was quite a evening.
Did he turn into Frank the Tank?
He did turn into Frank the Tank. He took the mic at the after party and was on the mic all night.
Because you know who is baseline Frank the Tank? Loic. How many of y'all saw Loic?
Loic is undefeated in international fights. My highlight was the Japan store opening.
Yeah.
The party afterwards was incredible. And just being in Japan and opening that store and like showing up in Japan to like, I mean, I don't know if Rob or Loic saw anything beforehand. I mean, I'm sure they saw pictures, but I was a tour manager, I think. No, I was working for the brand at the time, but showing up there and not knowing and not seeing it and walking into that crazy store was just like, it was like walking into like the Star Trek Enterprise, you know, with like tunnels of light and like revolving doors and like, I don't think there was smoke.
Store
but
design was always Wonderwall?
I mean, for me, it was so the highlight was seeing something that was thought of as an idea and actually come to reality. And Pharrell, like Nigo alone was off the chain, but Pharrell and Nigo together was like, it was insane. So for me being the third partner in it, you know, I had to, when it came to the money and we were spending all, you know, for me it was sort of like, yo, how, it was like I was trying to enjoy it, but at the same time, it was so much money being spent on some of these ideas. We're like, what the hell is going on? So for me, it was kind of like, I was trying to manage how we're gonna take this to the next level and go crazy, and they were trying to manage how we're gonna do this the most creative way and make this the biggest thing. So I just sort of, when you got two great guys, two creative giants like Pharrell and Nigo, you just gotta let them do what they do.
That's an interesting point. Just, hey everybody, if you can keep it down. That's an interesting point because one thing that I feel like the brand, the stores, the family overall has always taken a path of like quality over sort of quantity. And so I know that there were probably moments when you could have done the production differently and then been in Macy's or whatever the case may be, but were those conscious choices? And in hindsight, do you think that that's why BBC is here when a lot of those other sort of vanity lines are not? If you guys can all kind of speak on that. Loic.
I'll speak a little bit. I think that in general, a lot of vanity brands weren't very passionate. I think it was just sort of like, and we were seeing it now with skincare. It's like, okay, you're famous, you do this, why not start this? So I think that the longevity of the brand just speaks volumes to like Pharrell, Nigo, like all of these guys, their dedication and their passion. I mean, I know Philip mentioned, you know, like they didn't have a background in fashion at all. And, you know, over the years, just like, you know, I'd see them like doing things with the brand, like learning from the bottom up, like packing boxes, you know, figuring out what worked well for retail. Like just, they did all of the work, and I think that that makes a difference, especially for anyone out there who wants to start a brand or does have a brand. I think it's the passion and the vision, and just that real authentic focus. It wasn't, in my opinion, from where I stand, it didn't seem like it was ever like, oh, let's like make money. It was like, oh, this is my vision, this is what I want to do. So I think that made the big difference.
I agree.
I also think that it not being available for so many years sort of created this demand for people always wanting it, right? And then you got to think about people in the South that's not, they don't have the access that we have in New York and the big cities in LA. So I feel like the brand sort of was able to, people was able to get it and have it. And I feel like that was a part of the bridge of the longevity. Because for the start of it and for many years, you couldn't get it on purpose. You couldn't get it.
It was a destination.
1,000%.
Yeah. Philip?
This isn't really on the topic, but I think we kind of skipped a really important piece of this puzzle, and it's a person named Skate Thing. And without Skate Thing, we wouldn't have any of these logos. And I think Loika Rob should tell like the original story of like the night that Pharrell and Nigo talked about the ideas, and the morning when Nigo came back with this stuff from Skate Thing, which is the origins of the brand. And you know, Pharrell and Nigo are both blessed to have Skate Thing as a creative partner. Skate Thing is, if you don't know, he's the person who did all the original Bape logos, the Bape camos, like everything. So, you know, as a, you know, like Rob said before, we're like a sister brand to Bape, and we, you know, we started from Bape, and so without that foundation, like we wouldn't have this original creative stuff.
So the DNA was there from day one. What, you know, was this? Did this all happen on one of the trips to Japan? You know, was he there and he was sketching things out? If you guys can just talk about how exactly this iconic logo or the brand identity was formed.
Loic?
Yeah, let Loic speak up.
Yeah, I think that was actually second trip where they discussed the idea, and then we discussed it at the office the day, and that night at a party, we were in a club, and Shin came to meet us at the party and showed us the three logos. That one of them is on the wall now, the other one is our Curve logo, and then the Standing Astronaut. We're all on a sheet of paper, and then that was it. We're all fell in love with them.
Incredible. I think, like, you know, obviously there's so much that has happened in between 2003 until now, including moving the store and most recently opening the Miami store. Hopefully you guys have been there. It's unbelievable.
Fire.
But if you guys can also just talk about where you see the brand going from here. You know, 20 years is a really big deal. It's a lifetime. It's more than so many brands could even dream of. But what are we talking about when we all come back together in 2033 for the 30th anniversary? Mimi, since you're in the trenches.
Well, I don't run the company, so, but I think it's evolved so much.
What's your pitch?
I would love to see more Billionaire Girls Club, more women's wear. Yeah, we started, like, I think I was lucky enough to see Vashti's designs, and I was so excited. But we're still, you know, going slowly. So I would love as much. I mean, obviously it'll take some time, but as much options for girls, because like you said, there's tomboy girls, there's feminine girls, and you can switch it up. There's, you know, all different styles of expression. Now we have a lot more women in the office, even our workers here. Yeah, so for example, all our female workers in the store, they're wearing the kids' clothes, and because it's a crop top and they like the fit. We're trying to mimic that in BGC now as a tighter crop top, because before it was boxy. So now we're trying to expand silhouettes into pants, into more sweaters, into more knitwear, because we've seen a lot of positive reaction. Our creative director is in Paris right now, but she's done an amazing job. So hopefully we can keep growing Billionaire Girls Club, keep growing ice cream, BBC, and even kidswear. Our Europe team just launched their own version of kidswear. So just expanding it not just for men, because I know women can wear men's clothes, but also so that you have the options.
And then Shady, if you can talk about where do you think you will be in 10 years and your relationship?
Retirement home, being pushed around by a kid wearing BBC clothes. Actually, I have a 2-year-old wearing BBC clothes. I don't know. I mean, I'm sporting a Carhartt suit, so I kind of see BBC getting into more fine, you know.
Oh.
Fine line,
Bespoke,
more refined
yeah.
for the older gents that are getting out of t-shirts and hoodies.
Okay. Cut and sew, more cut and
sew.
sew.
Yeah.
Vashti?
I mean, I see the brand just continuously growing and evolving. I think what's also great about BBC is that they also do things like events like this. They do community things. So I really feel like as a movement beyond the clothing, I see that just continuing its growth.
Rob Walker. 10 years.
10 years?
Zoom out.
Just healthy, you know. Just like, however it could be healthy.
Yep.
That's all I hope for it. You know, health is wealth.
Agree. Philip.
BBC is for the children.
And Loic, as somebody who's kind of calling the shots, what are the big moves that you have planned that you can speak on?
We don't really like to speak about future plans, but I think we have a lot of exciting things that we're going to tap back into that people have been asking for a while. So, we're planning for more tours in Asia, in Europe. So it should be an interesting next 10 years for sure. Stay busy.
Yeah.
I also hope that. I also hope that somebody from the original crew is always involved.
Yeah.
Right? Like, no matter where it goes, if, you know, the additional partners coming, whatever, I always hope that somebody from the crew has a say, a voice, something to keep the connection going. Because it really started from, it started as a family. You know, just a bunch of young kids excited to, you know, voice their energy and their ideas. And, you know, it was music and then clothing, and then, you know, it's taken on everything and beyond, you know, that we all couldn't imagine starting out. So just hope that the connectivity of somebody from the old crew always being in it some way, somehow.
Well, on that note, I couldn't end it any better than that. So, thank you guys.
Yo, shout
Please
out to
give it up
Minya.
to this panel.
Shout out to
Minya.
Shout out to Minya for going easy on us. But hold up 1 second. There's one person in the room that made sure that we got to Japan or anywhere in the world and made our lives a lot easier. Nicole Planton.
Yo, shout out to
Shout out to Nicole. In my right hand.
She was our den mother.
Yeah,
she might have sent us to Africa when we were supposed to go to Japan, but we love her.
Yeah. So, congratulations, 20 years, you guys. And we're going to keep it going. And thank you to everybody who showed up to support.
Yo, make noise for Rob Walker.
Thank you.